Hello, all you beautiful, amazing people out there. I'm Carolyn. Welcome back to another episode of As I See It. I left you yesterday with a vent. I felt it necessary, really, to do that because I know we all wanted to vent, and I felt like by demonstrating my frustration and anger and also giving it context, I thought it would help many of you process your own anger and frustration, and it did. I could thank you for the feedback. Reading your comments broke my heart. To see all of the women who have suffered so much is just heartbreaking. It's just heartbreaking that it's just a reality of our society and our culture, that this is just who we are, that women get raped and abused, and that's just who we are. That's just the way it is. We just have come to accept it. So while I was reading your comments, first I got extremely sad, and then I got extremely angry, and then I got fired up. I woke up this morning still feeling a million different things. And then I went out for my walk and drinking my coffee, and I'm starting to get a little fired up. And I want to fire you up too. I don't want to leave us all, I think I'm on an anthill. I don't want to leave us all in a state of helplessness and hopelessness. And so I'm hoping that today I can yesterday I shared my venting so that we could all vent. Today I'm hoping to emanate my fired up power. Let's put it that way. If you haven't read the comments of yesterday's video, please go do that, because if you don't understand the reality for many women in this country, I think it's really important to see that women, abuse of women, rape of women, incest, molestation is not an anomaly. In fact, when the Me Too movement came along, I started to realize that we have been the silent minority for way too long. Way too long. And have you ever heard of ancestral memory? I first heard of it in the television show Transparent. It's a really good show. And one of the daughters in that starts to have ancestral memory. They're a Jewish family. And she actually starts to have like flashbacks and memories about what some of her ancestors, her Jewish ancestors, went through. And I asked my therapist about it. I was like, do you believe in ancestral memory? And she had a little bit of a different take on it. But basically, and I talked to a Jewish friend about it. I've talked to a couple friends about it, but specifically my Jewish friend was just like, yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I definitely, there are things that my ancestors went through that I carry with me today. And it may not be so much like flashbacks like this character had in the show, like where you actually have actual memories and flashbacks, but there is definitely something to be said about what your ancestors transmit to you down the line, the things that they went through, the challenges, the struggles, the oppression, the horrible Holocaust and slavery and women. We'll get to that in a minute. So this concept of ancestral memory is real. That what happened to our ancestors generations ago is still very much a part of who we are. We can't deny that. We all know that we're products of our families, we're products of our parents. Well, it goes back a little deeper, a little further than that. We're products of our ancestors. Whatever our ancestors were going through made them who they were. It made them the people they were, the parents they were, the grandparents they were. It made the stories they told that got taken down the line. So our ancestors very much inform who we are. So to say that Holocaust victims, that the ancestors of Holocaust victims, wouldn't necessarily still carry some of the atrocities, within them, the results of those atrocities within them is ridiculous. Same with slavery. 150 years ago, a few generations. So to say that I just saw something recently, a documentary, the fear of police, fear of white authority figures during the time of slavery, but during Jim Crow. I mean, it was horrific the way the cops treated African Americans and former slaves. That gets carried down through the generation, and it very much affects the descendants of those slaves and Jim Crow era people very much today. What we don't ever talk about is the effect of the same oppressive powers that be, the same oppressions on women. We don't ever talk about that. And it's been something that has been bothering me for a long time. We accept, those of us who are woke, we accept that the African Americans of today are products of slavery and Jim Crow, that those past things very much affected who they are. We don't think of women in terms of being property. Women were very much property. Very much property. I just posted last night because I saw a comment that women now suddenly know what it's like to be oppressed. No, it's not all of a sudden. We have been oppressed in ways that people just don't talk about or acknowledge or recognize. Until 1920, it was legal to beat your wife. We were property. We've always been property. In the way back in the 1700s, once a woman got married, her property was no longer hers, it belonged to her husband. She was property. She belonged to her husband. You want to talk about free labor? You want to talk about abuse? Sure, we got to sleep in the big house. We got to wear the pretty clothes and live in the big house and sleep with the master. But we were very much property. It was legal to beat us. We may not have been raped out in the barn, but we were raped. And it was okay, because we were the wives. So to think that women have not been oppressed, the one thing that has always astonished me that we gloss over is that women did not get the right to vote for 50 years after former enslaved men. Former slaves got the right to vote before women by 50 years. If that doesn't tell you what this society thought of women, I don't know what. 50 years, half a century. Sure, there was Jim Crow and everything that prevented a lot of black people in a lot of southern states, especially from voting. But the fact is, the United States Supreme Court, the Constitution, said the whole federal government acknowledged the right of former slaves as citizens before women. Think about that. Women couldn't own property in every state until, I don't look at the post that I put yesterday, 1940s or something. In the 1970s, women couldn't open a bank account or a credit card without her husband's signature. We've never been equal. We have been property and still are property in many ways. You know, we don't get a equal wage. Pretty much it's still okay to rape us, right? Men are very seldom held account for raping us. We are still very much property. And you want to talk about ancestral memory. Let's talk about ancestral memory. We are so empathetic to the plight of many modern African Americans, you know, and the rampant poverty because of redlining and all the other institutional, systemic, racist things that have prevented a lot of African Americans from having a lot of the opportunities that many of us had. We're really quick to empathize and sympathize with them, but we don't have the same empathy and sympathy for women. We don't see women as being owned, as being property, like they were. And part of that ancestral memory is that of passivity, of not speaking up. We were taught not to speak up. So not only did we have the institutional and lawful things that oppressed us, making it legal to beat us and rape us, and, you know, I mean, how can you leave an abusive husband if you can't even open a bank account by yourself? You want to talk about oppression? You want to talk about owning another human being? And our ancestral memory tells us not to speak up about it. That, you know, you're not really oppressed. You're lucky. You get to sleep in the big house with the master. You're not oppressed. You're not oppressed. No. Look at the pretty house you have and the pretty clothes and all the pretty kids you get to have. So our ancestral memory has taught each and every one of us. Some of us are a little further along, depending on how we were raised, not to speak up about it. We are taught not to speak up, to just accept what happens to us. And even in modern day, when we do speak up, look at what happens. I'm a woman on the internet. I know exactly what happens when we dare to speak up. Bully, harassment, death threats. So that's the reason I brought up the ancestral memory. Women have ancestral memory too. And I think our ancestral memory has given us the tendency to be passive, to not take action, to not get angry, to not get riled up. And this is where I am today. I am reading your comments. I am reading your stories. I am reading the horrific, disgusting, despicable things that happened to you, that happened to me. We are fucking powerful. We are fucking strong. We're stronger than them. We're more powerful than them. Think about all the privileged right-wing white boys, we will not be replaced, how sensitive and upset they are that anybody should have equal rights. Think about how pissed off and whiny they are. Imagine they couldn't go through half the shit we've been through. We are strong, we are powerful, and we are not going to let them win. We're not. You are strong. You are a fucking survivor. You are badass. You have gone through things that would make them curl up in a fucking ball and die. They could never handle the things they've done to us. And that has made us strong. We're not powerless. We're not weak. And we're not going to be fucking passive anymore. Stay tuned. I'm thinking Carolyn's Army, As I See It Army. We're going to act. We're not going to be victims anymore. We're not going to be passive. We're not going to let our ancestral memory stop us from fighting for what is fucking ours. We built this country just like everybody else did. Off the backs. While the men were out back in the day, we were taking care of the house. We were taking care of the kids. We built this fucking country just like everybody else did who's claiming that. And it's time to fucking take it back. Stay tuned. I'm going to have action items. We're going to act. We're not going to sit by and just let this happen. We're going to act. Are you excited? Are you pumped up? If you're fired up, do hashtag fired up. I want to hear from you. And I also want to hear fired up. Yes, I'm willing to act. We're going to do some things together. We're going to do this together. We're going to act. Whether it's sending letters. I like the idea of sending coat hangers. Stay tuned. I'm going to be doing videos about things that we can do so that we can feel like we're doing something, so that we don't feel powerless, because we're fucking not. All right? Hashtag fired up. Yes, I'm willing to act. Thanks. We're powerful. You're powerful. You're strong. You're badass. And you know what? If nobody has ever told you, I'm fucking proud of you. What we've been through isn't easy. And it informs our lives in so many different ways. Our relationships, our self-worth, our body image. And here you are. Be proud. I'm proud of you. See you soon.